How Killer Mike built a barbershop empire and rebuilt his community.
Right now, barbershops owned by Atlanta rapper KillerMike are giving children free back-to-school haircuts.
I grew up on the west side of Atlanta. You grow up and you're taught to reinvest in your neighborhood.
What does the ultimate comeback, the coldest victory, really look like? It's not a Grammy on the mantle. It's not a sold-out arena. It's a move so personal that it heals a wound that's been bleeding for generations. Killer Mike is showing the world what that truly looks like, turning a simple barbershop into a growing empire of community hubs. But the mission wasn't born from success. It was forged in the ashes of a multi-generational war against a system designed to break his family. A war that valued his great-great-grandfather's life at just $21.11 after the horrors of the Tuskegee experiment, and saw his mother, a brilliant entrepreneur, lose not just her flower shop, but herself to the poison of addiction that flooded their neighborhood. This is the story of a man who inherited that legacy of debt. A man who, after facing his own bankruptcy in 2011 and nearly losing everything, realized that war had finally come for him. He decided to stop fighting their system and start building his own. His first move? He didn't buy a mansion. He didn't buy a fleet of cars. He bought a small forgotten spot off a Craigslist ad, a single rundown barbershop. That one move was just the first brick in a new foundation. This is the untold story of how the heir to a $21.11 check set out to rewrite his family's balance sheet and build an empire that would finally settle a debt that was a century in the making. To understand the war Killer Mike is fighting today, you have to understand the paradise he's lost as a child. We need to go back to the Collier Heights neighborhood on the west side of Atlanta. This wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a fortress of black excellence, a self-sustaining enclave that black people had gentrified for themselves, creating a world of their own. This was a place with a soul, a place where the children of working-class parents, like Mike's grandparents, went to the same schools and played on the same streets as the children of the black elite. From the state representatives to the parents of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself, he grew up in an ecosystem that armed him with a sense of pride so strong that by the time he met the outside world, he knew he wasn't equal. But a kingdom this self-sufficient was a threat to the outside world. And in the 1980s, a slow poison began to seep into the community. It was a playbook being run in black neighborhoods all across the country. First, a new devastating drug arrived, seemingly out of nowhere. Then the guns mysteriously flooded the streets. The crack epidemic had come to Atlanta. Suddenly, a community built on unity and pride was being torn apart by a war that wasn't its own. And in the middle of this rising chaos, a young Michael Renner was forming a dream. At 9 years old, he knew he wanted to be a rapper. His father, a good and loving man, saw the world closing in, saw the opportunities in the neighborhood drying up, and gave him a warning born from fear.
I remember telling my dad, telling Big Mike, I want to be an artist. And him saying to me, you know they call it broke artists for starving artists for a reason.
But his mother, Denise, saw something else. She was a fire. When he ran to her and declared, I want to be an MC, in a moment that would define his entire life, she looked at her son and said, F it, that's what it's gonna be. She was his first believer, his first fan, the first person to see the king in him. But the war that was consuming their neighborhood wouldn't spare its heroes. The poison that had flooded the streets found its way into his home. The brilliant, deeply sensitive artist who had been his first believer began to suffer from addiction. The system had found its victim, and at 19 years old, Mike had to watch as his mother, in a moment of despair, attempted to take her own life right in front of him.
All heroes have a weakness.
My mother later suffered an addiction, attempted to commit suicide in front of me when I was 19.
It's the specific, unimaginable pain of watching the strongest person you know be brought to their knees by a force that was designed to break them. He had seen a paradise lost and a hero fall, and the weight of that fall would become the defining principle of his entire life, a relentless mission to rebuild the world that had been taken from them. The fall of his hero and the slow death of his neighborhood lit a fire in a young Michael Renner. He was determined to build something that couldn't be broken. He would honor his mother's belief in him and defy his father's fear. He made it to Morehouse College on a scholarship, but the dream of being a rapper, the dream his mother had blessed, was calling him. He made the fateful decision to drop out.
I enjoyed learning, I enjoyed the school, but I wanted to be a rapper. I thought it was a romantic thing to do, you know what I'm saying? Like leaving higher education to go accomplish this impossible dream.
What followed was not a story of instant success. It was a decade-long grind. He got a record deal, but it was a bad fit, a corporate machine that stifled his voice and caused him to infight with his friends. For years, he was haunted by the advice of a white business manager who had talked him out of his lifelong dream of opening a barbershop. He was an artist adrift. And then in 2011, the bottom fell out. This is the part of the story that was hidden for years. A sheriff showed up at his grandmother's house with a court summons. As his finances crumbled, he had fallen behind on his obligations, including child support. Months later, he was forced to file for bankruptcy. The court documents from that year paint a devastating picture of a man at rock bottom. His total assets, $2,550. His debts, $78,008. His 2000 Chevy Tahoe had been repossessed. His only worldly possessions of value were a pair of $200 Nikes and some leather coats. The case was ultimately dismissed, leaving him with no relief. He was broke, defeated, and publicly humiliated. But in the middle of this professional and financial collapse came a much deeper, more profound loss. His grandfather, Willie Burke Sherwood, the man who had broken the cycle of fatherlessness in their family, passed away. And at the funeral, in his moment of deepest grief, his baby sister Shonda came to him.
You know, I remember my grandfather died. My sister Shonda, she teased me. She's my baby sister. She put her hands on my back. She said, hey, man, you know, go on and get it all out now, because tomorrow you the leader of this family. That was 20 years ago.
My next question was, how did that feel?
It felt overwhelmingly scary.
This was the pivot. This was the moment that would change everything. He had hit rock bottom, bankrupt in the eyes of the law, and now anointed as the patriarch of his family. The pressure was immense. He had to build something real. He had to build something that would last. He had to build a new foundation, not just for himself, but for his entire family. So how does a man at rock bottom, bankrupt, and grieving begin to build a new foundation? He starts by confronting the ghost that had been haunting him for a decade. For Killer Mike, that ghost was a single costly mistake, a dream he abandoned on the bad advice of a man who didn't understand his world.
My accountant was telling me it's not a thing to do. He's a white Jewish guy, so it's not like the haircut experiences are the same. He's getting a haircut maybe once a month, once every couple months. Black guys got to get a haircut every week.
That one piece of bad advice from a guy who didn't understand the culture had cost him 10 years. 10 years of personal financial struggle, of losing cars and homes. But now, at the absolute bottom with nothing left to lose, he still had a secret weapon. The person who had been there through it all, his wife, Shanna. She was the one who saw his decade-long regret and gave him the final push, advising him to finally pursue his lifelong dream now that he had the chance. And so, he took the ultimate leap of faith. He was scrolling through Craigslist and saw an ad. A small rundown barbershop was for sale for a few $1,000s. It was a high-stakes bet made with the hard-earned cash from his independent grind. He made the most reckless and important bet of his entire life, and he made it without telling her. It wasn't a fairy tale. Shanna's anger was real. In his impulsive move, Mike hadn't just bought a business, he had bought her a burden. And as she later told him, "You bought me the shop, this is my burden." But that initial conflict is what forged their true partnership. His grand artistic vision had just collided with her sharp, pragmatic business genius. He had bought the dream. She was the one who would make it reality.
Hey, I'm Michael Render. This is my wife, Shayna Render. I'm known as Killer Mike. We opened a barbershop. That barbershop is called the Swag Shop.
This was the secret weapon. It wasn't just his dream. It was their combined hustle. While he handled the streets, she handled the spreadsheets. While he was telling hustlers they could no longer do business in front of the shop, she was building the business plan that would make it last. And together, they began the first act of reclamation. They hired the artist Chris Hope to paint the inside with brilliant murals, including a powerful portrait of Dr. Martin Luther King that would overlook the waiting area. They started giving out Hot Wheels to kids instead of lollipops.
When kids get their haircut here, they get a free Hot Wheel with every haircut, no matter how many haircuts they get. Because I just want to inspire kids to dream big.
This was the first breakthrough. They weren't just renovating a building, they were restoring the soul of a community hub. The first brick in their new world had been laid. The first swag shop wasn't just a victory, it was the blueprint. It was proof that a barbershop could be more than a business. It could be a cultural landmark, a safe haven, and the beating heart of a community. And for the next few years, that's exactly what it became. The Edgewood location, planted right in the heart of the historic Old Fourth Ward, wasn't just a place to get a haircut. It became the unofficial city hall for the neighborhood. It was a place where ideas were exchanged, where deals were made, a ground-level institution and a community fighting to hold on to its soul. It became a cultural hub so authentic that it hosted the season premiere of the legendary animated series The Boondocks, and became a go-to location for music videos. The shop had become a landmark, but for Mike and Shanna, it was just the beginning. Their dream was bigger. They wanted to build a nation of these community hubs.
The biggest thing is growing the swag shops. I believe that the swag shop barbershops, I think it's a $100 million company. Barbershops are important in my community because they're social centers. They're places where men can congregate and discuss politics, sports, ideas.
And then in 2017 came the ultimate validation, a call from the Atlanta Hawks. They were in the middle of a massive multi-million-dollar renovation of their arena, and they wanted the swag shop to be a part of it. This wasn't just another location. This was a move that would make history. For Killer Mike, a kid who grew up just 4 miles from the arena, a kid who dreamed of being on the team but had no athletic prowess, this was the ultimate full circle moment. But history is rarely that clean. 2017 was supposed to be the year of ultimate triumph, the year the dream became a reality. But as the historic Hawks deal was coming together, a different, more painful story was reaching its final chapter. His mother Denise passed away after a long and painful battle. The one person he needed to share that victory with, the woman who had blessed his dream when he was just a 9-year-old kid, was gone. and all he had left was the memory of her final haunting warning.
I miss her so much. She said, you think your grandmother dying is the worst thing that could happen to you? She says, but I'm your mother. When I'm gone, you're gonna understand that. And man, that girl got out of here and it hit me that she gone.
He had lost his first believer, but he could still honor her blessing. So through the grief, he poured everything he had into finishing the mission she had inspired all those years ago. In 2018, that mission was realized when the State Farm Arena location opened its doors.
The newly renovated Phillips Arena will include the NBA's first courtside bar, a KillerMike barbershop overlooking the court.
Having KillerMike build a swag shop, a barbershop overlooking the court, where you literally can get your hair cut.
The KillerMike grand opening ceremonies with State Farm Arena. Your swag shop is here.
We're here. I can't explain how good it feels, to be very honest with you.
It was the first barbershop of its kind inside a major sports arena, a victory that was now a tribute, and it cemented a powerful hidden legacy. In 2021, his wife Shannon Render was officially recognized as the first Black woman to own and operate a barbershop inside a major professional sports venue. The team that had been forged in the fire of a Craigslist purchase and a 2-week silent treatment had just made history. The promise to heal a 10-year-old womb had blossomed into a groundbreaking empire-building partnership.
Once I became an established rapper, the only other thing I'd ever dreamed about doing was owning a barbershop.
The dream was no longer just a dream. It was a thriving, growing, and history-making reality. But for a man on a mission to rebuild a lost world, one victory is never enough. His next move would be to save another cornerstone of his childhood. He partnered with his brother in the struggle, T.I., to buy Bankhead Seafood, a legendary 50-year-old restaurant that was on the verge of closing forever.
The return of Bankhead Seafood.
T.I. and KillerMike secured the $1 million loan to revive the West Side restaurant, the Bankhead Seafood.
Me and T.I. grew up on the west side of Atlanta. You grow up and you're taught to reinvest in your neighborhood by the people that grew you up. We decided that a 50-year-old legacy should go to 100 years, and that's our goal.
For decades, he had been fueled by a single painful memory, his father's warning that he would be a starving artist. He had built an entire world to prove that doubt wrong. But the mission wasn't truly complete until years later, when the man who had first given him that fire called to finally extinguish the flame of that old wound.
He says, hey, I just read this article about you. They're describing you as a leader. He said, I want to apologize. I said, what do you apologize? He said, I said to you one time, you know they call it starving artist for a reason. And I know part of you took that as I didn't believe in you. I said, yeah, that hurt me right there. I said, but I don't regret it because it made me work hard. Oh man, we cried like babies on the phone.
It was the ultimate validation. A son had not only earned his father's respect, he had earned his apology. So what's the real impact of this new foundation? It's not measured in dollars or headlines. The true proof isn't on the balance sheet. It's on the street, in the lives of the people he's touched. It looks like a Saturday afternoon at the swag shop on Edgewood Avenue. In one chair, a young kid is getting a free back-to-school haircut, leaving with the Hot Wheels car and a fresh boost of confidence. In another chair, an old-timer is holding court, debating sports and politics, passing down wisdom to the young men listening in. It's a social club for the working-class man, a place where, as Mike says, young men learn how to grow into the type of men the community needs. It looks like the kids from the neighborhood who now have their first job at Bankhead Seafood, a job that's 10 minutes from their house, a job that means they never have to endure the humiliating drive to the suburbs and the risk of a police shakedown just to earn a living. And then comes the cultural coronation, the moment the city of Atlanta officially recognized its impact. The Atlanta Hawks, in the middle of a massive renovation of their arena, made a historic decision. This is the human impact. It's the tangible proof that his war on the system is about building, not breaking. He creates jobs, gives his people a foundation of safety and opportunity. He builds community hubs to fight neighborhood decay. He's not just building businesses, he's rebuilding the very definition of a community leader. What KillerMike is doing is bigger than a barbershop. It's a blueprint for rebuilding a lost world. It's a lesson that was passed down to him not in a business school, but from his own grandfather, a man who grew up in the Jim Crow South and never forgot the thriving Black-owned economy that the system tried to erase. This is the core of his mission. It's a philosophy built on a painful truth, that our communities once had a thriving, self-sustaining ecosystem, and it was taken from them. The swag shop is not just a business. It's the first step in rebuilding that lost economy. Bankhead Seafood is another. He's not just an artist or an activist. He's a modern-day heir to the legacy of giants who built his city. He's taken the political blueprint of Maynard Jackson, who demanded that Black businesses get a piece of the city's contracts, and the spiritual blueprint of Dr. King, and he's adding his own chapter, a relentless, unapologetic focus on actionable pride and economic independence. He's challenging every single person to stop waiting for a savior and start building. So when you look at Killer Mike's career, don't just think about the Grammy Awards or the sold-out tours. Think about the lessons he learned from the giants who raised him. Think about the wisdom of a grandfather who taught him about the lost economy of a world that was stolen from them. Think about the quiet sacrifice of a father who was denied his own dreams, who worked tirelessly to ensure his son could achieve his, and whose apology years later would become the most powerful fuel of his life. And think about the unwavering belief of his mother, Denise, the brilliant, flawed, and beautiful woman who was his first fan, his hero, and the artistic soul of his entire mission. The swag shop, Bankhead Seafood, they aren't just businesses. They are monuments to that legacy. They are the physical manifestation of a son's promise to honor the sacrifice of the men who built him and fulfill the dreams of the woman who believed in him. This is the story of a man who understands that the biggest boss move you can ever make isn't just building your own empire, it's rebuilding the world that built you.
I try my best to represent well for my people. Ultimately, I'd like to be remembered as a good man, as a good black man.
If this is the kind of blueprint you believe in, and you want to be a part of a community that celebrates the real hustlers changing the game, do two things for us. Hit that like button and subscribe to Hustlers in the Hood. We're all about highlighting the grind and the wins that make a difference. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.